Bible in a year, making it easier to understand.
Stephanie, imagine you're scrolling through your favorite crowdfunding site, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, whatever, and you see a project you absolutely love. You click to donate, but a massive red banner pops up at the top of the screen that says, "Please stop giving. We literally have too much money and we don't know where to put the extra gold."
Okay, first of all, that has never happened in the history of the internet. Usually, they're emailing you 3 times a day, like, only 48 hours left. We need your help to reach our stretch goal for the vegan leather straps.
Right? But that is exactly how the construction of God's mobile headquarters starts in Exodus 36. It is the only time in human history a capital campaign was too successful. Moses has to issue a formal decree to the entire camp. No more jewelry. We're good. Seriously, save your gold for a rainy day.
That is such a wild way to start the day. Welcome back to Bible in a Year, making it easier to understand. I'm Stephanie, and that high-energy guy over there is my husband, John. We are on day 43, everyone. We're diving into Exodus chapters 35 and 36 today. And John, you've already got me hooked because, well, usually these chapters about the tabernacle, or as we call it, the mobile headquarters, they feel like a lot of repetition. Like, we just read the blueprints a few days ago, and now we're reading the construction report. It can feel a bit dry.
Oh, I get it. If you're just reading it for the measurements, it's like reading the assembly instructions for an IKEA bookshelf. Attach bracket A to slot B. But here's the deal. This isn't just a rehash. This is the great implementation. This is the moment where the God talk becomes God work. It's the transition from theory to reality. And it starts with a massive, massive shift in the vibe of the camp.
Well, we have to remember where we just came from, right? The last few days were rough. The golden calf incident, the anger, the broken tablets, the uncertainty. I feel like the people were probably walking on eggshells. They were probably wondering, are we still on for this? Is God still coming with us?
Exactly. And that's why segment 1 today is all about the hook and the context. Because before a single curtain is sewn or a single board is overlaid with gold, Moses has to set the stage. And he does it with two things that seem totally opposite: a command to stop everything and an invitation to give everything.
Okay, let's start with the stop everything part. Because the very first thing Moses says in chapter 35, before he even asks for the gold, is about the Sabbath. He says, 6 days' work shall be done, but on the 7th day you shall have a holy day, a Sabbath of solemn rest. John, why start the biggest construction project in history by telling everyone to take a nap?
It does feel counterintuitive, right? It's like a CEO walking into a kickoff meeting for a multi-billion-dollar project and saying, "All right, team, first order of business. Nobody check their email on Saturdays. Meeting adjourned."
But it's more than just a nap, isn't it?
Way more. Think of it as a theological guardrail. God is basically saying, listen, the work we're about to do is holy. Building this sanctuary is beautiful, but the work must never become more important than the object of the work. It's a divine permission to stop. In our world today, our 24/7, always on, if you aren't hustling, you're failing culture, we define ourselves by our productivity. We think we are what we do.
And God is flipping that script?
Completely. He's saying, your identity isn't based on how many gold rings you can melt down or how many curtains you can weave. Your identity is that you are mine. So, before we build my house, let's remember that you belong to me by resting with me. And check out the specific detail in verse 3. You shall kindle no fire in all your dwellings on the Sabbath day.
I was going to ask about that. Why the fire? Is God against a nice campfire?
Here's the modern mirror. In the ancient world, starting a fire wasn't just flicking a lighter. It was a laborious, manual process. You're striking flint. You're rubbing wood together to get friction. It was a whole workout. So God is saying, no starting the engine today. No heavy lifting. Not even for the holy project. It's a reminder that God's presence isn't powered by our frantic energy. It's powered by His grace.
That makes so much sense. It's like saying, don't get so busy doing things for God that you forget to actually be with God. But then, once the rest is established, Moses gets down to the materials list. And this is where my researcher brain kicked in, John. He asks for gold, silver, bronze, blue and purple yarn, fine linen, goat hair. Wait, John, they are in the middle of a desert. They've been wandering for weeks. Where did a bunch of former slaves get high-end Egyptian linen and pure gold jewelry? Did they have a pop-up shop in the wilderness?
Right? It's not like there was a Hobby Lobby behind a sand dune. But here's the kicker, and this is a deep connection to earlier in Exodus. Remember when they left Egypt? God told them to ask their neighbors for silver and gold. The Bible says they plundered the Egyptians. So, all this wealth they're carrying? It was a gift from God during the Exodus.
So, they aren't actually giving God their stuff. They're giving God the stuff he gave them a few months ago?
Precisely. It's what I call a circular economy of grace. It's like when our kids want to buy us a Father's Day gift, but they don't have jobs, so I have to give them $20 to go to the store and buy me a tie. I provided the money, and they get the joy of giving the gift. God is letting the Israelites experience the joy of generosity using the very resources he provided when he rescued them from slavery.
That is beautiful. It takes the pressure off, doesn't it? It moves it from, I have to pay God back, to, I get to participate in what God is doing. And the text keeps using this phrase, everyone whose heart stirred him, or everyone whom his spirit made willing. It sounds like this wasn't a tax.
Oh, definitely not a tax. There was no wilderness IRS coming around to check their receipts. This was a stirred heart movement. The Hebrew word is nadab. It means to volunteer or offer oneself freely. It's a movement from the inside out.
I love that. Because after the golden calf, where they used their gold to make a fake god, now they have a chance to use that same gold to welcome the real God. It's like a restoration project.
It really is. And Stephanie, we can't miss the no jargon zone here. We talk about offerings and contributions, but let's just call it what it is, a community huddle. Moses assembles the whole congregation, men, women, rich, poor. The rulers brought the expensive gemstones, sure, but the women who were wise-hearted. That's another great Hebrew term, chokmah. They brought their skill. They were spinning goat hair.
John, you know I'm going to ask about the goat hair. Is that a big question I need to save for later, or can we talk about it now? Why is God's headquarters covered in goat hair?
Oh, we are definitely getting into the miraculous goat spin in a bit. But the context here is that everyone had a part. Whether you had a gold brooch or just the ability to spin thread, you were essential. It's the ultimate inclusive project.
I just keep thinking about how relieved they must have felt. To go from, God might destroy us because of the golden calf, to, God wants us to help him build a home. It's such a picture of forgiveness in action.
It is. And it's the perfect place for us to take a quick breather. When we come back, we're going to talk about the two guys who actually had to manage this whole Kickstarter project, Bezalel and Oholiab. And we'll look at how God uses our secular skills as sacred worship.
I'm ready. We'll be right back after this break. And we are back from our quick break. I was just asking John during the off-air time, John, you were literally just staring at your phone, looking at a Kickstarter for a new kind of smart water bottle that tracks your sips.
I can't help it, Steph. I love a good innovative project. But I was just thinking about how that relates to what we're talking about today. You know, most of those crowdfunding projects actually fail if they get too much money. It sounds like a dream, but it's actually a logistical nightmare.
Wait, really? I would think having extra cash would make everything easier.
You'd think so, right? But check this out. This is our modern mirror for today. There was this project called the Zano drone back in 2014. They wanted to raise about $200,000, but they ended up getting over $3 million. And because they had so many more backers than they planned for, their supply chain completely collapsed. They couldn't fulfill the orders, the complexity went through the roof, and the whole thing flamed out. Having too much for a human project usually means you don't have the leadership or the systems to handle the scale.
And that brings us back to Moses. Because he's sitting there with a massive pile of gold and yarn, and he's like, we have a problem. We have too much.
Exactly. But unlike those failed tech startups, God's mobile headquarters project had something, or rather someone, to handle the weight. And that's where we meet our two project managers, Bezalel and Oholiab.
I love these two. They feel like the unsung heroes of the Bible. But John, I noticed something in chapter 35, verse 31. It says, God filled Bezalel with the Spirit of God. Is this the first time we see that phrase?
Yes. This is the kicker, Steph. If you're a modern seeker and you think the Holy Spirit is only for preachers or people in white robes, listen to this. The very first person in the entire Bible described as being filled with the Spirit wasn't a priest. He wasn't a prophet. He was a tradesman. He was a guy who worked with his hands in the marketplace, not the ministry.
That is such a big deal. So, technical skill, like being a good designer or a master carpenter, that's considered a spiritual gift?
100%. Bezalel was given wisdom, understanding, and knowledge specifically for artistic designs in gold, silver, and bronze. God basically said, I'm giving you a divine, verified checkmark for your craftsmanship. It's a reminder that your secular job, whether you're coding, doing plumbing, or designing a logo, can be a sacred act of worship if it's done for Him.
That really changes the way I look at my Monday morning. But I have a big question about the team dynamic. Moses doesn't just hire Bezalel, he brings in Oholiab, and the research shows they were a bit of an odd couple, weren't they?
Oh, totally. It's like a Hollywood buddy cop movie. Bezalel is from the tribe of Judah. That's the prestigious tribe, the aristocratic leaders. But Oholiab? He's from the tribe of Dan. In the social hierarchy of Israel, Dan was often considered the least or most humble tribe.
So God is pairing the high society guy with the working class guy?
Exactly. It's a beautiful picture of community diversity. God is saying that the construction of His home requires everyone, regardless of their social standing. Plus, Oholiab had the ability to teach others. So Bezalel is the creative visionary, and Oholiab is the one making sure the next generation of artisans knows how to handle the tools.
I love that synergy. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of what they were actually building. Chapter 36 is filled with boards and sockets and curtains. John, give us the no-jargon zone version of the engineering here. Why acacia wood?
Okay, so acacia wood, or shittim wood in Hebrew, was basically the only lumber available in the Sinai. But it wasn't just budget wood. It was super dense, like Dollard Aprocos 850 dexcatagrams per meterless a percible. It's full of tannins, which means it's naturally resistant to rot, water, and even those desert insects. It's been called incorruptible wood.
Is that like a metaphor for Christ?
You nailed it. It prefigures the sinless, incorruptible humanity of Jesus. And then they overlaid it with gold. So you have this earthy, common wood from the desert covered in heavenly glory.
And then there are those silver sockets. The text says there were 96 of them for the frames. Why silver?
This is where the physics gets cool. Each of those silver sockets weighed 1 talent, which is roughly 100 pounds to pounds. When you add them all up, you have a foundation weighing about $5. This wasn't just for decoration. Those massive silver bases acted as ballast to keep the whole tent from tipping over or shifting in the desert sandstorms.
Wait, and wasn't that silver collected from the redemption money?
Yes. Every person paid half a shekel as a ransom for their soul. So the entire structure literally rests on the foundation of redemption. The message to the modern seeker is, your relationship with God isn't built on shifting sand. It's built on the solid weight of what He paid to get you back.
That is incredible. But John, I have to ask about the miraculous goat spin. I saw a note in the research that says the women who spun the goat hair curtains were doing something extraordinary.
Okay, this is one of those, wait, what, moments. The text in chapter 35 says the women whose hearts stirred them up in wisdom spun the goats. Now, ancient Jewish commentary and some linguistic experts suggest they weren't just spinning wool they had sheared off. They were so skilled and so eager that they actually spun the hair while it was still on the living goats.
Are you kidding me? They were following goats around the camp with their spinning wheels?
That's the tradition. Whether it was literal or just a way of saying they had lightning speed skill, the point is that their hearts were so stirred that they couldn't even wait for the shearing. They were weaving heaven and earth together.
That is such a contrast to the golden calf. There, they were impatient and demanded a god now. Here, they are using that same energy and skill to meticulously build a space for the real God.
It's a total redemption of their talent, and honestly, it's a challenge to us. Are we using our goat spinning skills, the things we're naturally good at, just for our own benefit, or are we letting God stir our hearts to use them for something bigger?
I think that's the question we all need to sit with for a minute.
Absolutely. And when we come back, we're going to wrap up with segment 3, looking at the final overfunding miracle and how Moses showed some serious integrity in how he managed the books for this project.
Can't wait. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
And we are back. If you're just joining us, Stephanie and I are geeking out over Exodus 35 and 36, specifically how the Israelites basically broke the record for the most successful Kickstarter in human history.
It really is a miracle of the surplus, isn't it? John, we left off with the artisans, Bezalel and Oholiab, going to Moses with a problem.
Right. Imagine being the CEO of a nonprofit and your lead engineers walk into your office and say, "Hey, boss, you got to tell the donors to back off. We have so much gold and yarn that it's actually getting in the way of the work."
It's so counterintuitive. In our world, more is always the goal. But in Exodus 36, verses 5 to 7, the craftsmen tell Moses, the people are bringing much more than enough for doing the work. And Moses, I love this, he actually issues a formal decree throughout the camp. No man or woman is to make anything else as an offering.
That is pure integrity, Steph. Most leaders, if they see a surplus, they think, hey, maybe we should build a second, smaller tabernacle for the priests to have a lounge. Or, let's upgrade the gold to platinum. But Moses didn't have a transactional heart. He had a faithful heart. He wasn't trying to amass endless resources. He was trying to put God's resources into action.
But John, here is my big question for the day. We spent a lot of time in chapter 36 reading about the number of curtains. There were 10, right? And the 50 loops of blue material on each set, and the 50 gold clasps to join them. Honestly, as a modern seeker, I find myself wondering, why? Does the creator of the universe really care if there are 49 loops or 51? Why all this technical detail in the Bible?
I love that you asked that. Think about it this way. Here is your modern mirror. Have you ever seen the inside of an older Apple computer? Back when Steve Jobs was running things, he insisted that the circuit boards, the stuff no one would ever see, had to be beautiful. They had to be laid out perfectly. When his engineers asked why, he'd say, "Because I'll know it's there, and the craftsman will know it's there."
So, it's a standard of excellence?
It's a love letter, Steph. God cares about the details because he cares about the relationship. The 50 loops and the gold clasps were a way of saying, this is an orderly, beautiful home for a God of order and beauty. And it tells the people, your work matters because you matter to God. He doesn't just want a good enough tent. He wants a space that reflects his holiness.
That actually makes those lists of boards and silver sockets feel much more personal. I was reading that the acacia wood they used was essentially the only hardwood available in that specific desert. God wasn't asking them to do the impossible. He was asking them to give the best of what was actually in their hands.
Exactly. And the material science is wild. The acacia wood is dense and insect resistant, what they call incorruptible. And that goat hair covering? We mentioned the miracle spin earlier, but functionally, goat hair is a desert engineering marvel. When it's dry, the weave stays loose to let the heat escape. But when it rains, the fibers swell up and become totally waterproof.
So it's like high-tech, smart fabric for the wilderness?
Literally, God gave them the perfect mobile headquarters for their environment. It was sturdy enough to last for 400 years, but light enough to move whenever the cloud moved.
I think the most moving part of this whole chapter, for me, is the shift in the people. We started the book of Exodus with them being forced to build for Pharaoh, slaves making bricks with no straw. But here, in chapter 36, they are restrained from giving too much for God.
That is the power of a stirred heart, Steph. Slavery is about obligation. Worship is about love. They weren't building out of fear that God would strike them down. They were building because they were so grateful he was still with them after the golden calf.
It's the ultimate vibe shift, from I have to I get to.
And that is where we want to leave you today. If you're feeling like your faith is just a to-do list, if you're just checking the boxes like a slave in Egypt, stop and look at the circular economy of grace. Everything you have, your skills, your gold, your goat hair, it all came from him.
He isn't looking for a donation, friends. He's looking for a stirred heart.
All right, here is your text message summary for day 43. True worship isn't about how much you give, but how much your heart is moved by the God who gave you everything first.
Love that. Well, that wraps us up for today. Thank you for walking through the wilderness with us.
We're going to take a final break, and when we get back, we'll have the metadata and the thumbnail concepts for those of you following along on the video version.
See you tomorrow for day 44.
Keep those hearts stirred, everyone.